I didn't mean to stay that late. At least, that's what I told myself when I noticed the others had already left. The office had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that feels intentional. The golden hour poured in through the tall windows, casting warm light across the floor. His desk, his face. He was still here. And so was I. He leaned back in his chair, sleeves rolled up, tie loose. There was something about the way the sun hit his skin that made it hard to look away, and impossible not to look back once I did. I heard myself laugh at something he said, too loud, too sudden. A reflex, nervous maybe, or hopeful. He smiled. And then, that silence. Not awkward. Not empty. The kind that waits for someone to move first. I shifted in my seat, suddenly aware of how close we were. How long I'd been watching him talk instead of listening to what he was saying. It was the kind of moment you either step into or run from. I didn't run. His eyes met mine and stayed there. Longer than they should have. Long enough that I felt it in my stomach. I didn't mean to kiss him. But in that moment, under that golden melting sky, I wasn't thinking with my head. And maybe I'd wanted to for longer than I cared to admit. He wasn't supposed to mean anything to me. At least, not beyond the usual office banter. Project meetings, coffee runs, shared frustration over broken printers and impossible deadlines. But he noticed things. Things other people missed. Like when I'd tuck my hair behind my ear 3 times in a row. A nervous tic I didn't even realize I had. And he'd glance over, quietly asking if I was okay. Like how he'd bring me my coffee exactly how I liked it, without ever asking. He saw me. And that terrified me more than I knew how to admit. Because he wasn't just anyone. He was him. The one everyone trusted. The one with that calm voice and steady gaze. The one who never crossed the line, who was always a little too perfect. And I was not perfect. Not even close. But I craved the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. Like he was fighting something. Like he shouldn't be staring but couldn't stop himself either. We kept it professional, we had to. But the tension? It lived in the small things. The way our hands brushed when we passed each other papers. The way he'd linger just a second too long when we laughed. The way his voice dropped when we were the last 2 left in a meeting room. It built slowly day after day. Until silence became louder than words. And presence felt more intimate than touch. So when I say I didn't mean to kiss him, it's only half true. Because my body had been leaning toward him long before my lips ever did. Back in that office, the sunlight was dripping down the walls like honey. Soft, slow, golden. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, but inside it was just us. He stood up to stretch, walking over to my desk with something in his hand. A file, I think. I barely looked at it. My eyes went straight to the way his forearm flexed when he leaned in, casual, like he didn't know exactly what he was doing to me. He said something about wrapping up. I nodded, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Lost in the warmth of his voice, the scent of his cologne, the fact that we were suddenly, undeniably, alone. The silence returned, familiar now but heavier. He didn't back away. And I didn't lean back. Our faces were close enough that I could feel the shift in his breath. The way it caught for just a second when he looked down at my mouth. I should have spoken. Should have moved. Should have done something. But instead I just sat there, heart in my throat, skin prickling with awareness. The space between us wasn't empty anymore. It was thick with every word we hadn't said, every glance we'd tried to ignore. He reached out, slow, careful, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I swear I forgot how to breathe. That small touch undid me more than any kiss ever had. It was too gentle, too knowing, too intentional, and it made everything in me ache to close the gap. Still, neither of us moved first. We just stood there waiting. Not for permission, but for the last layer of resistance to fall. I don't know how long we stood there, half a foot apart, not touching, barely breathing. His hand hovered at my jaw, like he was asking something without saying it. My skin burned where his fingers had brushed, even though it had lasted less than a second. I looked up at him, and he looked down at me. And in that gaze, everything we'd both tried to hide rose to the surface. The stolen glances, the imagined touches, the quiet wondering that never really stopped. My breath caught when he stepped just a little closer. I could smell him, warmth and something clean and familiar. The kind of scent that lingers in your clothes long after someone leaves. He didn't rush. He didn't even speak. He just stood there waiting like he needed me to give in first. But the truth was, I already had. My pulse was a drum in my ears. My hands twitched in my lap, aching to reach for him but frozen in place. Everything inside me screamed for movement, but fear or pride held me still. Until he whispered, barely audible, "We don't have to pretend anymore." Something inside me broke. Or maybe it opened. Because the moment he said that, I tilted my head just slightly, but it was enough. Enough for him to know. His hand moved again, this time to my cheek, fingers trembling just a little. And when his thumb brushed the edge of my lips, I swear the entire world narrowed to that single point of contact. No more thinking. No more holding back. I closed the space between us. And the moment our mouths touched, slow, uncertain, devastating, it didn't feel like a beginning. Felt like coming home. His lips were soft, but the moment was anything but. It wasn't fast. It wasn't urgent. It was slower than anything I'd ever felt. Like he wanted to memorize every breath between us, every shift in my body as it leaned into his. And I did lean in. Completely. My hands found his shirt, fingertips curling into the fabric like they needed something to hold, something to believe in. Because nothing about this felt real. And yet, it felt more real than anything that had come before it. His hand cradled the back of my neck, thumb tracing slow, grounding circles against my skin. My whole body reacted to that, heat blooming beneath my ribs, a kind of trembling that wasn't fear, but something far more dangerous. Want. Not just for the kiss, but for him. The version of him that looked at me like I wasn't just another face across a desk. Like I was something he'd been fighting the urge to touch for far too long. We didn't speak. Words would have shattered it. There was only the sound of my breath catching, the soft exhale against his mouth, the quiet creak of the desk behind me as he gently backed me into it. Not forceful, just inevitable. The kiss deepened just a little. Enough to say what neither of us could. I've wanted this. I've wanted you. But beneath the heat there was something else, something raw, exposed. It wasn't just about attraction. It was the vulnerability of two people finally letting go of everything they were supposed to resist. And the moment it ended, when our lips finally broke apart, I didn't move. Neither did he. We just stood there, inches away, breathing the same charged air, staring at each other like the world had just shifted. Because it had. The moment after the kiss was louder than the kiss itself. Not in sound but in feeling. He stepped back first. Just an inch. But it felt like a mile. I felt the air slip between us again, colder now. My body still leaned toward him, like it hadn't gotten the message that it was over. That the moment had passed. His eyes searched mine, and for the first time that night, he looked unsure. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but my voice caught on the knot in my throat. What was there to say? That it was a mistake? That it shouldn't have happened? We both knew that wasn't true. But saying what was true, that I'd wanted that kiss since the first time he laughed at one of my terrible jokes, or the first time he remembered my coffee order, or the way he always stayed just a little longer when we worked late, that felt impossible too. So I just stood there. Silent. Staring. Still tasting him on my lips. He rubbed the back of his neck. A nervous habit I'd seen 100 times before. Except now it meant something different. Now it was his tell. I shouldn't have. He started, then stopped. He didn't finish the sentence. I almost wished he had. Even if it hurt. Instead, he took a slow breath, looked out the window at the last streak of sunlight fading behind the city skyline, and whispered, "That can't happen again." My heart dropped, even though I'd expected it. And still, I didn't regret it. Not for a second. Because in that kiss I'd felt something real. And real was rare. Even if it wasn't allowed to last. The next morning I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, trying to look normal, professional, untouched. But I wasn't. My lips still felt warm. My skin still carried the ghost of his fingers. And my mind wouldn't stop replaying that moment, the breath between us, the way he whispered, "We don't have to pretend anymore." Like it was some kind of permission. But then he took it back. And now I didn't know where to put any of it. When I walked into the office, the world hadn't changed. The lights still buzzed faintly overhead, keyboards clicked. The printer jammed twice before 10 a.m. But I had changed. I felt it with every step, especially when I saw him. He was already at his desk, focused, headphones in, face unreadable. No smile. No glance. No trace of the man who had touched me like I was something he'd dreamed of for months. I sat down, pretending I didn't notice. Pretending I was fine, too. But my hands were trembling just slightly. And every time I caught a glimpse of him out of the corner of my eye, something inside me twisted. We didn't speak that morning. Not even a nod. And somehow that silence hurt more than if he'd just said, "I regret it." Because now I was left alone with the memory, with the ache, with a kiss that lived in the space between fantasy and consequence, and no roadmap for what came next. Days passed. We went back to small talk. Meetings. Emails. The version of us that played it safe. But something had shifted. Even in the silence. He still wouldn't meet my eyes for too long. And I didn't push. I couldn't. Because I understood. What happened between us didn't fit into the life we built around rules and routines. It didn't belong in daylight. It couldn't survive in calendars and conference calls. It lived in the in-between. In late evenings and warm sunsets. In the hush of an empty room, where the world couldn't hear our hearts racing. It was a secret written in breath. One we'd both agreed to forget, without ever saying it out loud. But forgetting isn't the same as not remembering. And sometimes when the office is quiet and I glance across the room, I catch him watching me. Just for a second. Just long enough to feel it all over again. And in that moment I know he remembers too. Not the mistake. The want. That kiss wasn't an accident. It was everything we'd buried rising. We don't speak about it. We never will. But every now and then when the light hits just right, and the air is thick with what we never said, I still taste that moment. And I don't regret a thing.